I have with me, it's not just someone that is an expert in functional nutrition, not just someone that has quite literally spent thousands of hours studying the subject, studying the topic of all of the different tenets of really great health, but also someone who wrote a pretty amazing book, Beyond Foods. You'll see that mine is a little bit dog-eared and highly marked because I read it frequently. It's a good reference. It's not just a good book. And lastly, I would say maybe most important, she's my friend, Barbara Swanson. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here and that we're going to have this conversation with everybody because there is so much to talk about. So we have this great group going on the 30-day gut reboot. And, I can see that that's a tough thing for a lot of people to do, to reboot their gut. And I know that for some people, this might be brand new, this idea of rebooting your gut. So you've had a chance to sort of see the group, see what's going on in there. Tell us a little bit about what that might mean to you, someone that has really studied this topic significantly. Can you reboot your gut?
Oh, absolutely we can. In fact, when I work with people and they come to me and they have something going on in their life that they would like to shift, this is always the first place I start. And the tenets of functional medicine are actually built upon the knowledge that health begins in the gut.
Which is fascinating, right? Because it makes sense when you really think about it. Our gut is the only engine for processing, the fuel that your body needs. It's the only place you're going to get it, except maybe go out in the sunshine. But we're not plants. We're not going to grow just because of sunshine. So, it makes total sense that you could do that. But how does that work? How does the gut repair itself? It's kind of a remarkable thing.
It's an amazing thing. And I think one of the statistics that I quote a lot, because it's an impressive statistic that to this day, even for me, it's surprising when I hear it, but of all of the DNA in your body, and a lot of people think of the mechanics of their body as being driven by the engine of their DNA, right?
Okay, yeah.
They got this blueprint, and that DNA is what runs them. Well, 95% of the DNA in your body is not human.
Oh, wow.
It's bacterial. And that bacterial DNA runs the engine of your DNA.
Wow. That's profound. That's substantial. And, I've also heard, and perhaps you could speak to this, that the gut, your immune system is essentially a function of your gut as well. Is that right?
Well, 100%. When you're born, you have no working immune system, but you have the beginnings of the immune system, and that exists in your skin and your gut. And in fact, your skin and your gut are the same organ system. It's called the integumentary system. Oh. So they're very closely related. And when a baby is born, if it's born naturally through the mother's birth canal, the skin is actually inoculated with probiotic bacteria from the birth canal. And in mother's milk, the gut is inoculated with bacteria in the mother's milk. And that wakes up that infant's innate immune system that they are born with.
Oh, so wow.
Think of how many children, for whatever reason, can't be breastfed or need to have a C-section. 30% of Americans have C-sections now. You're guaranteeing you have a child whose immune system cannot function correctly if you do not do something to reboot it.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. Now, the other thing that I kind of read about in the book was what I find really fascinating is that your gut is almost an independent, isolated system, right? Something goes in and it goes through your whole system, and there's a barrier the whole way. So tell us a little bit about that. What is the gut barrier, and why is that important?
Okay, that's a great question. And I just said that the skin and the gut were the same. So your skin is the outside of your body and it interfaces with your environment. The gut is your skin on the inside. The tube from your mouth to your anus, it's a tube of skin. So the gut barrier is basically a barrier of epithelial cells that talk to the bacteria in your gut, which convert what you eat into the nutrients you need. A lot of digestion isn't your acid. It is actually the bacteria after your stomach. And that gut barrier, I just read this 2 weeks ago. It is a brand new study. They've discovered that with the right and healthy probiotic populations, a lot of the toxins that you normally would have to have go through your liver,
Right.
they've discovered that your small intestine will do that work and it never even reaches your bloodstream. But it can't function if that gut barrier cell is not healthy.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is where food comes in, right? Because for most people, most of the time, and this has even been the case for, my life, a lot of others, before you come to a knowledge, right, you can't unlearn what you've learned. It's a little bit like taking, what is it, the red or blue pill in the Matrix, right, where you wake up to the real. Once you see it, once you realize the difference of what is food and what is really not food, at least in a biological sense, the way your body understands food to be. There's a lot of information in here about that. Most people are just going to the grocery store, they're buying their groceries, and they're walking the aisles, and they think it's food, so they take it home, and they might not know the difference. You go into it a lot in this book, and you actually talk about the difference between what actually is food, what is junk food, what is disguised as food and never really should be eaten. Tell us a little bit about that. How does someone make sense of that journey?
Oh, that's such an important thing to learn. And I think it is why a lot of people, they want to do something like the 30-day gut reboot because they've heard enough information to know there's something there, right? There's something there. But it can feel very overwhelming. It's like, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to believe. There's a million diets out there. All of them claim to do the same beneficial things. Some of them are radically different. So how do you know what's what? I try and keep it really simple. If it's in a box, it's more likely not to have what you need, because it's not just, is it fat? Is it carbohydrates? Is it proteins? That's easy. You can get a lot of fat and carbohydrates and nothing good for you. What runs your body are called micronutrients, and they're the things we need in very minute amounts. And they're found really only in whole foods. So if you can pick it up and bite it, or you can pick it up and cook it, and you haven't had to pull it open out of a box or a bag, it's much more likely to be good for you. In fact, I just read today on some research I was doing before this call, in a meta-study of like 20,000 people on majorly different diets, high protein, high fat, high carb. What they discovered is there was no difference between high protein, high fat, and high carb over a 10-year period in health, unless those three things were whole foods. Then, as long as it was whole foods giving you that, you were more healthy than anyone else. It didn't matter what you were doing as long as it was food.
So what should people look for when they walk into that grocery store, right? Where do they make their journey?
So around the perimeter, go around the outside of your store. You want to hit the fruit and vegetable section. You want to hit maybe the frozen food section, because it's not like there's a lot of wrong things. If it's in a bag and it's a pea, it's a pea. It's still a pea. Is that as good as fresh peas? Well, you know what? The fresh peas aren't available all year. So maybe you need to get frozen peas. There's going to be a meat counter. Try and get whole cuts of meat, hamburger, a pork chop, or, if you eat meat. What you want to avoid is going down the aisle that has canned sauces, going down the aisle that has pre-made dinners that you add water to. The average processed boxed food has over 30 additives for flavoring because they've taken everything else out.
Which is crazy to me to think that there's so much of that stuff in there, right? And kind of freaky because it's not really food, right? It's something that keeps it on the shelf long enough that they don't lose money.
Yeah.
It's not food.
Exactly right. It's not food. It's calories.
Yeah.
It's a macronutrient. And you know, if you buy a hamburger helper with a packaged sauce and you add water to it, well, you're going to make hamburger, hopefully, so that will be a real food. But even pasta, a lot of pasta, there's no real nutrients left. It's basically a paste that they've re-added everything back into.
Now you point this out in a really clear way that I liked a lot in the book. You talked about different types of washing, right? And that is, you know, an alternate version of brain washing, right? But these types of washing that they do to get people to think that something is healthy and it's not, right? They'll buy a chip that looks like a Cheeto, but the Cheeto has, you know, decorative packaging that would imply, well, yeah, it's vegan, but it's a Cheeto.
Yeah.
So talk to the folks about that.
You can be vegan and eat junk food and not be healthy. You can be vegetarian and be unhealthy. You can be a raw fooder and be unhealthy. Although that's a little harder. You can still do it. It is more about paying attention to, is it a real food that exists in nature? And that doesn't mean you can never have something that's packaged. It does mean pay attention to that. I just read another statistic today doing research, and this one kind of blew me away. They did a meta study in Greece, in Israel, and they discovered that people who eat fast food just once a week have a 20% greater chance of dying of a heart attack.
Holy crud, once a week?
People who eat fast food 4 or more times a week have an 80% greater chance of dying from a heart attack.
I wish maybe we should add text like at the bottom of the screen that says, "Where are you going for lunch today?"
Really?
Wow. Well, and I love this because in the book, page 18, right, you do this. Greenwashing is the term used to describe the practice by which a manufacturer uses meaningless terms and words coupled with impressive marketing to give the impression that their product is environmentally safe, friendly, natural, and good for you. You know who did this in a huge, huge way, and it really makes it clear that they're messing with you, is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has a bottle of Coca-Cola that has a green label and a leaf on it now. And I'm like, but wait, how prevalent is this with our food sources in a grocery store?
It's every single product you buy that's in a package. With a few exceptions. I mean, Ragu even does it. I don't think Chef Boyardee does it, but that might be the one exception.
I don't think Chef Boyardee is trying to fool anybody. They're just like,
no, they're not trying to fool you.
It is what it is.
Exactly. I mean, I have this issue with my adult children. They'll buy something and they're like, oh, this is good for me. It says it's non-GMO. It's still a Cheeto. Non-GMO doesn't mean it's, it's gluten-free. Still a Cheeto.
Right. So this is what it means to really understand what food is, what it really is. Food being, you know, maybe a better definition of food being something that actually fuels your body without causing harm while it's feeding you, right?
Yeah.
But then you take a turn. You take a turn in the book that I think is really, really useful. You talk about food as medicine. And of course, this goes all the way back to Hippocrates. But food is medicine. How should people understand that? Why is food medicine?
So the way I like to explain it is, we have been built upon this physical embodiment that is the human body for thousands of years. maybe tens of thousands of years. And for every moment of that time, your body has built and been built, and your DNA is built and has been built to recognize and extract the micronutrients that allow those cells to stay alive and stay healthy. They are from your diet. They are not from anything else. You can't eat rocks and get it. You can't go to a laboratory and get it. If it's not in the food, your body cannot make it, and you will starve to death, even if you're obese. It's not a matter of calories, it's a matter of nutrition.
Wow. Now, there's some impacts maybe from our bad choices, right? Of not knowing the difference. And that's why this challenge that we're investigating, the 30-day gut reboot, is so important. Okay, so we were here, but you actually offer hope, because I sometimes I think people hear a lot of this green movement and focus on foods, and maybe sometimes they feel so guilty that they just say, man, I can't do that. That's so hard.
Yeah.
But in your book, you actually say, no, slow down. You know, progress is progress, even if it's little. Tell us your thoughts on that.
It's actually a keystone of what I believe, which is anything is better than nothing. If the only thing you can do today is drink one more glass of water, that one more glass of water is going to help your brain to function better. It is going to allow your kidneys to remove more toxins. That is going to allow you to have a little more energy. So maybe you don't eat the candy bar at 4. And because you don't have the candy bar at 4, you don't have a sugar crash at 5. And because you don't have a sugar crash at 5, you eat a healthier dinner. And because you eat a healthier dinner, you sleep better. Because you sleep better, you repair more.
Right.
It's all connected.
So progress is progress. Take the little with the big, and just don't beat yourself up. Stay on the path.
No, it really, oh my gosh, this is so important to me. It isn't all or nothing. I'm a huge believer in that. Nothing is ever all or nothing. Everything you do one way or the other is a direction. So look at it as a path. You're walking one step at a time on that path. Maybe you walk backwards a step or two, but if you're on a path, pretty much you're going to stay on that path and move. As long as you realize you don't have to do a certain thing. You don't have to be vegan. You don't have to be vegetarian. You don't have to be raw. You don't have to eat a lot of meat. You don't have to do anything except very consciously choose what you put in your mouth and what you buy.
Right. And I think the other thing that's interesting is your body will adapt. You talk about that as well, that, you know, if you're hooked on sugar, you know, don't worry, make the changes and your body's going to adapt and like it. Your body, you're going to come around and you're going to like it. Yeah. So
you're going to love it. Actually, that's a huge piece, is the more you get those micronutrients that allow your brain to function the way it's meant to function, your body begins to recognize that. And I know you and I've talked about this, the less and less you crave and want those things that aren't really that great in the first place.
Yeah. Because I mean, I hear that from people that are much further down that path. They say things like, you know, I had a candy bar first time in years and I felt sick. Mm-hmm. And I think, wow, you know, because most people have a candy bar and they're like, great, that was a candy bar, right? And maybe that's the difference, right? It's that micro baby steps all along the path, right? Yep. So another thing I guess I wanted to bring up that you cover in the book that is important is something called leaky gut. Now, on the road to, you know, the impact on our gut, you know, some people could develop leaky gut. What is it, and what can people do about it?
So leaky gut is a term that's used to describe when you have not had a great diet and what you have eaten over time has caused damage to that gut barrier. And typically, leaky gut is a combination of a few things. One is most people eat too much at one sitting. We as a culture in America, you know, our food portions are about 30% greater than any other country in the world. So we are trained to eat way more than is actually good for us. So when you have too much food, the body can't really do a lot with it, and it'll sit in your gut and rot basically. That causes an overload of bad bacteria to grow on that rotting material. And it also stresses whatever good populations you have, which can lead to an overgrowth of a lot of not so healthy bacteria in your gut. All of this begins to stress the lining of your gut, that barrier we talked about, and it develops micro tears. And the problem with that is those micro tears allow protein molecules that are very large to enter your bloodstream. And your immune system, the one that you develop in your bloodstream, your B cells, T cells, and all those guys, your immune system looks at large protein molecules, protein in particular, as bacteria or viral invaders. And so it elicits an immune response. But there isn't really anything to kill. There's just pieces of bad food roaming around in your circulatory system. So a leaky gut can lead to chronic inflammatory issues, heart disease, development of plaque, brain dysfunction, just because your immune system can't handle what was supposed to be taken care of in your gut.
And I guess that inflammation, it could also, cause inflammation in your gut because your body thinks something's wrong and it's trying to fix it.
Oh, it's directly inflammatory to the gut. Absolutely.
Wow, interesting. So yeah, really important. Now, what would you do to sort of chart a better course? What if you were to say, hey, here's a better way to live? What if some people look at this and say, well, I can't afford to eat, all organic fruits and vegetables all day, every day, right? How do people do that? What's a realistic approach to this?
So I encourage people to, first of all, realize, again, it's not all or nothing, and prioritize it. So if you do eat meat and dairy, it is pretty important that you use organic or local natural meat and dairy. The additives, the steroids and hormones, they're not only hard on your gut, they have some pretty drastic side effects for your hormone systems that can lead to cancer. So I'm a big believer in prioritizing and as much as you can eating natural meat and dairy. And then outside of that, make a list of what you like and then find a way to eat it without having to feel like you're giving something up.
There you go. I like that.
So let's say you're used to getting a hamburger and French fries and a large Coke at lunch. Part of that is convenience. You can walk to the fast food place, get it in 5 minutes, eat it on the way back. A lot of it's habit, and some of it is addiction. The additives in fast foods are addictive. That's science proves that. They're not stupid. They want you to keep eating their foods. So what can you take from home that you like so that you want to take it? And maybe in the beginning, that's a little more difficult, but maybe there's some kind of sandwich you like, or maybe you make your own sandwich that's similar to the one at the fast food place. You don't want to make it, I had to give this up.
Right. What's interesting about that, I was speaking with someone recently and they said sometimes the fast food conundrum can be solved just by bringing an apple with you or a piece of fruit, right? And most people like fruit, right? So if lunchtime is at a certain hour, half an hour before, eat the apple. Yep. It's going to satisfy a little more of that need than maybe you had thought. So
buy a jar of peanut butter if you like peanut butter or nut butter and eat that with your apple, because now you've got some fat in your system and that's very satisfying.
Yeah. That'll slow your roll at a couple of these places that aren't so healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
Now in the book, as you get in, you really talk about these 4 building blocks for functional nutrition: the nourish, energize, protect, and renew. And that really becomes sort of the meat and potatoes of that's funny.
That's good.
Well, let's say the algae and probiotics of how to take care of your body. it really goes a long way. Why are those 4 things so important?
Because everything that you need to eat is in one or more of those groups. When I created the book, when I was researching it, I researched for about 10 years, actually, before I ever wrote anything. But I took a 13,000-mile trip around the US, and I went to every health food store in every city I stopped in. And I went through all of the supplements, all of the foods, and anything that was actually legitimate, as in I knew it actually gave health benefits, fit into one of those 4 groups.
Oh, wow. That's great. And you mentioned these are powerful. So building blocks, superfoods, digestive nutrients, antioxidants, and regenerative nutrients. And then you go on to explain all the different things that are in there. But with this gut reboot, I noticed that 3 of them are sort of handled right out of the gate, right? The superfoods, digestive nutrients, and antioxidants, and the regenerative
And
nutrients,
the regenerative,
right?
yeah.
This, what is so powerful about the combination of AFA algae, enzymes, and probiotics? It seems to do so many people so much good, but why? Why is it so powerful?
Because it truly is an essential program. The AFA algae is the most nutrient-dense molecule on the planet, the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. Every one of your microminerals that you need, essential fatty acids, really powerful antioxidants, all of the vitamins you need, and is in particular a really significant amount of B vitamins in just a gram of algae a day. So you're getting a lot of your micronutrient needs without having to shop for it. That's one of the biggest things I think helps people. If they are still working and figuring out how to make their dietary shifts and they don't know what to do, this is an all-in-one. They're going to get the gut support, they're going to get the digestive support, and they're going to get the nutrients they need.
That's pretty powerful. So advice, right? We're kind of starting to wrap up, but what would you say, to somebody that's, I guess we're 2 weeks in now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to those of you that are doing the 30-day gut reboot, good on you. It isn't easy. And, those of you that are having success, I mean, if you've made it this far, if you're here at this interview with Barb, you're doing great.
Absolutely.
So what would you advise people to do to continue to push through and make this a success, and maybe even join us again the next time we do it?
Yeah, I would encourage people to look at it as a process. It's not a thing you do once and then you never do it again. You don't exercise one day a year.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be
way, is it?
But you can't eat well one day a year. That won't translate into an actual change. And I just think it's so helpful in this world we live in right now. There's a lot of things that are very hard to deal with. They're scary, and we don't have personal control over most of them. We have very little personal control in our modern world. You have 100% control over what you put in your mouth. So just take advantage of that.
That is really sage advice. There is a ton of things that people are subject to. They have nothing, they can't do anything about it. But you can pick what you eat. Yeah. I love that. That's great advice. Barbara Swanson, author of Beyond Foods. I would suggest you pick it up. It's a really good book. And Barb, where can they find it?
The Functional Nutrition Handbook.com.
Okay, functionalnutritionhandbook.com. Go check it out and keep joining us. Keep telling us about your progress here on the 30-day gut reboot. It's a pleasure having you. And Barb, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.